Hi there everyone, I'm Petra, life coach and advocate for survivors of narcissistic and emotional abuse. Welcome back to the channel, and I would just like to take this opportunity to say Happy New Year to all of you. I know it's been almost a week into the new year, but I just wish for you a lot of joy, a lot of peace and a lot of fulfilling experiences. You know, it is really up to us to change our focus, to change our perspective on life, especially when our perspective is not serving us, when it is not fulfilling us, when it is not bringing us joy. It's about creating those new experiences. And new experiences can be small, they can be bigger experiences. It really doesn't matter, as long as you are giving yourself a new experience, because it does change your thought pattern and it also changes your perspective on life. So if anything, I wish you all great new experiences, and that this year may be a year of introspection for you, a year of having compassion for yourself and looking at the experiences that you have been through in this past year and how you can take from that experience, take the good from it, because there is always good in the experience. You can always take the lesson from there and use it to your advantage. So without too much ado, I would like to just open up this topic of when you have to cope and deal with adult children who display very abusive behavior, narcissistic children, toxic behavior. It's a very, for me personally, I find it very, it's not a tangible subject. And why do I say that? Is because I cannot even begin to imagine the level of distress that you go through, the level of heartbreak and pain that you go through when you as a parent discover that your child is either narcissistic or displays very abusive behavior towards you. That has to be the most heartbreaking thing in the world, because, you know, just speaking as a mother, you carry this little one underneath your heart for 9 months. You birth the baby, you care for the baby, you raise the baby, and it is part, this child is part of who you are, of course. So when you find that there is distance that has come into the foreground, there is distance, there is abuse, there is a lot of hurt, pain, anger involved in that relationship with the child, that has got to be one of the most challenging experiences ever. So with this topic, I'm not speaking from a place of experience, but I do empathize and sympathize with what you as a parent are going through, because it is not an easy situation to tackle and it's not an easy one to deal with. So there is no wisdom that I can offer you in that. All I can do is offer you ways to cope with that situation. And it is not something, you know, oftentimes in this past year I've spoken to many single parents, many couples who have been asking how to cope with their adult narcissistic child. And it's really, you know, the question, let me put it that way, the question that is often raised is, how have I contributed to their narcissistic personality disorder? And I think this is very important, because it's not about placing blame on yourself or on your adult child, but it is about taking ownership. And as we all know, whether the narcissist is a family member or a friend or a co-worker, a narcissist will never take ownership or take responsibility for their part in the abuse or in the breakdown of a relationship. But you, as the healthy parent, need to take that ownership. And in so very many cases, I see that ownership is being taken, where, you know, some of you have said, well, maybe I over-pampered my child. Maybe I put them on a pedestal. Maybe I gave in too much because my child has come from a broken home. because I've left their father or left their mother. And yes, it is important to take that ownership, to see where the breakdown occurred, and also to see how you can take ownership in not helping your child to recover, because as we all know, NPD is not something that can be cured, but it is something that you can learn how to deal with, especially when, when there are grandchildren involved, for example. And it is so difficult to tell a parent, and it is not something that is really asked of you, but when it comes to, okay, what do? I am at the hands of this abuse. I am being abused by my own adult child. What do I do? It's very simple for me or someone else to say, just get them out of your life. Just break all contact. But that is such a painful thing to do when it is your own flesh and blood. So I do not take that lightly at all. Yes, it is important when the abuse just continues all the time, when you are belittled, when you are manipulated or intimidated. It is very important to minimize that contact. So, have the ways to cope. Really, I can just offer you a few ways to cope with that. I think one of the most important things is to minimize the contact. If your adult child is still living in the home with you, then there are certain rules that need to be put into place. And one of those rules is, if you continue to, for example, if there is alcohol abuse in the home, you can say, if you continue to drink, then I cannot have you in my home any longer. Then you need to look for your own place, or remove yourself from the situation. I cannot give you advice on that, but I can say that it is very important to set those boundaries. If you yell at me, if you disrespect me in my own home, if you get seriously drunk and the abuse is taken to another level, then I will call the authorities on you. I will have a restraining order put onto you. These are very, very hurtful things to even think as a parent, but just remember that you yourself are also being hurt by your adult child. You are being abused, and abuse is not okay. You do not deserve the abuse. So whichever way you can keep yourself safe, do not do it at the expense of your physical safety. If you feel threatened by your adult child, then you need to call authorities. You need to first physically put yourself, get yourself to safety before you go about setting the boundaries and removing your adult child from your home. It's very important to put your safety first. Don't take this too lightly. When it comes to setting boundaries, it is so important to explain to your adult child why you are setting these boundaries, and that there are consequences involved. If they overstep certain boundaries, there are consequences involved. If you are dealing with an adult child who emotionally abuses you, who gaslights you, who intimidates you, then you can say, if you continue to do this, then I will disengage. I will refuse to have a conversation with you. I will refuse to be in the same room as you. You as a parent are entitled to set those boundaries even when you are dealing with an adult child. If that means changing your locks, if that means not allowing them into your home because of the abuse, then that is what you need to do. It is ultimately, at the end of the day, it is about protecting yourself, protecting your mind, your body, your spirit, and demonstrating to your adult child that abuse is not okay. It is not about getting into a discussion with them on this topic, but it is about saying, this is as far as I'm going to allow you to go. I will not tolerate this kind of abuse in my home or anywhere else. So it is very, to just sidetrack here, the question that is also often raised is, how did my child become narcissistic? And there are so many different aspects, involved in that. For one, it is a biological aspect where it is in their genes. It could be that the partner that you are divorced from is a narcissist, so it is in their genes, sadly enough. It can have to do with their surroundings, with their environment, the environment that they grew up in, where they feel entitled to certain things. Coming from a broken home, they may feel entitled to even more attention, to being spoiled, to, you know, all the things that make up for a very ego-based perspective on life. So it is not all about you looking for blame or looking to find the blame in yourself. No, again, it's about taking ownership and realizing that there are very many aspects that make up a toxic person. I think it is also very important to confide in someone whom you trust, whether that is a neighbor, whether that is another family member, getting a counselor, a coach, a therapist, to be able to relay your story, because this is something that I can imagine you would want to do. You know, when something happens, when a situation occurs, it is so important to be able to tell your story, to get it out there, to confide in someone, to just take the weight off of your shoulders and share that burden. That is very important. So if there's anyone you can confide in, then do that. Another thing is when grandchildren are involved, and this can be a very sad situation because children are innocent in this situation, and oftentimes your adult child will use their children against you, the grandparent, use them as, you know, like as you would in a game of chess. They will use the children to create, or use the children against you. You know, use them as these little people to further manipulate you, to manipulate the children, to tell the children untruths about you, to turn the grandchildren against you. This is a very sad situation. And it's also a very personal situation. You know, it is, of course, that is not something that you would want to hear, where if you are given the advice to also break contact with grandchildren, the children are innocent. So this is a very tough situation. And again, when you as grandparent are, for example, looking after your grandchildren, you're spending the day with them, again, there are certain boundaries that need to be set. When you are interacting with your grandchildren, the boundaries need to be set with their parents, with your adult child. Very important. Do not let yourself be further abused just for the sake of the grandchildren. So again, there are very personal boundaries that you need to set, and make sure that the relationship with your grandchildren is one that is, you know, for as far as you can take it, that it is one that is a very healthy relationship, but also reinforcing your boundaries in that whole family dynamic. And that may be that when you set those boundaries, that your adult children will say, you will not get to see the grandchildren anymore. And sadly, this is a very lively truth. This is what happens where your grandchildren are kept from you. A very sad situation. And there is really no advice that I can give there. You know, you could send cards, you could send emails, but the question is really, will those cards and emails be shown to your grandchildren? So it is a very difficult situation to be in. But again, it is all about you. When you are the subject of this kind of abuse, it is all about protecting yourself. Not ego-based, but it is very loving and compassionate towards yourself to set those boundaries and to take care of yourself in that family dynamic. Your health, your well-being. You know, I believe that when you are trying to cope with a narcissistic adult child, it is all about taking it one day at a time. And of course, it is a lifelong process, because you just don't stop being a parent because your child is toxic. You have to get into that space in your head and in your heart where you can love your children, continue to love your children, but from a distance. Sometimes that is the only way to go. You know, sometimes you cannot sugarcoat this kind of raw truth. It is about keeping a safe distance, loving them from afar. That love will never go. You are not just going to stop loving your children. But it is about loving them from a distance, from not taking the abuse, whether that is financial abuse, whether it is physical abuse, emotional abuse. Set those boundaries and continue to love them. You know, whatever the love that you feel in your heart can be portrayed through speaking to someone. You know, as I said, get someone that you trust, that you can relay these situations to, relay your feelings to. Write out, again, you know, I've said this so often, write out your feelings. Do not ignore those feelings. Validate them. If you're missing your child, which I'm sure you do, then validate that. Yes, you're missing them. Yes, you wish that your relationship could be healthy and that it could be a two-way street. But sadly, this is just not the truth. So whatever you need to do to take care of your own health and well-being, that is the way to go. So again, take ownership and just release the blame, release the guilt. You did your best as a parent. From whatever level of consciousness that you were parenting from at that time in your child's life, that is what you knew at that point in time. And that is what you offered your child. You were raising them from that perspective. So you cannot go back and change the past. All you can do is look at the situation now and see how to proceed from where you stand now as a parent. So for all of you who are sadly going through this, I wish you, you know, courage, love, strength. It is not an easy situation to be in. It's a very painful situation to be in. But just know it's all about loving from a distance. So if you would like to share your stories on this very subject, I know there are very many of you there. It is not a subject that is often spoken of. Please put your comments down below or send me an email. Get in touch if you're looking for coaching or counseling yourself. And I'll be more than happy to reply to your emails. Take care of yourselves and speak to you all next time. Bye-bye now.